Greetings, gardeners. I survived the holiday. Caught something. I don't know what it is. I am so thoroughly shot up with vaccines. Who knows what it is? But I'm feeling better today. So I'm back in front of the camera. And I want to talk about citrus. It's wintertime, and citrus tends to be a winter-bearing crop. Now, not all varieties are winter, but many are. That's a very, very common. Most of our oranges and tangerines and stuff tend to ripen in the winter. Right here behind me, I have a Moro blood orange. I mean, maybe some of you know this plant. It's grown to a certain extent in California, and it does work pretty well there. Moro is one of the only blood oranges that will actually produce color and will sweeten up in relatively cool climates. I used to grow it in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it does work there. I'd get fair color in the fruit. Really, I think the cooler the nights and the warmer the days, the deeper the purple color comes into the blood orange, and that color is actually a acid that is related to the same chemical that's in raspberries, and so it has a raspberry-like flavor. And so if it develops, the fruit gets this sort of raspberry taste. Well, unfortunately, this is a beautiful Moro blood orange right here. It's just gorgeous, but Mountain View's climate doesn't look like it's going to allow the tree to be able to produce much pigment. The nights are just too warm and the days are too cool, apparently. Not enough variation, is my guess, as far as why I don't get the color. I get fairly decent tasting fruit. It's been raining off everywhere, and I've been juicing oranges every morning for breakfast. I don't usually drink orange juice, but I have been because of this tree. It's just producing. Now, the plant originally, when I put it in, I did this years ago because I loved Moros and I wanted to have one here. And so long before I moved, I planted this tree. And the tree struggled. It just didn't do very well. And so one day I was here and I got mad at it. And so I went ahead, I hurled chicken manure on that thing. I threw borax. I used borax to get boron on the tree because it's required for fruiting. I used Epsom salt, magnesium sulfate. It induces greener foliage because it makes more chloroplasts. There's a molecule in the middle of every chloroplast that Epsom salts will provide. So I came back a few months later, and my poor struggling tree was turning into a monster, and it has continued turning into a monster for years. It just grew and grew and grew and grew, but it wasn't fruiting. And then finally, a few years back, it started fruiting, but on the inside of the canopy, which is funny for a citrus. Usually they're more outside. They display the fruit. Now it's kind of balancing things off, and it's producing a very large crop. Fruits are both in and out of the canopy. The tree is becoming more normal, but I haven't fed it since that burst years ago. I was afraid to, because for years all it did was shoot up giant green monster, no flowers. So I just quit feeding it. Well, here it is, and we have a lot of oranges in this thing. Let's see. Okay, here's a nice looking one right here. Good size, right? Wow, bigger than my head. No, it's a good size fruit. This one's a little bit green, I'm afraid. But I'll show you the inside. I think most of the blood oranges actually originate with the variety that is kind of related to the Valencia type. Okay, they're not navels or tangerines or anything like that. They have a sort of Valencia-like flavor when they don't develop the raspberry color. And nope, no raspberry color. No, that happens. The juice has been good, and it is distinct. It doesn't taste like anything else, but it's just not the same as when it turns purple. No, it's good. It's an orange. There's nothing highly unusual, I guess, about it. A little bit of a flavor. Some of the fruit will develop a little bit of purple. When that happens, we end up with pink juice, and we get a little better flavor out of it, too. But citrus is very much dependent on where it's growing as far as how it's going to work out. Blood oranges, definitely one of the citrus trees that you might be able to plant them and grow them in any citrus area, but you might not be able to get the performance out of them you want. Tarocco and Sanguinelli, which are two very good blood oranges, they take a lot of heat. And so if you're in California's southern interior valley, you can do pretty well with them. Around the Bay Area, they were always sour. Here in Hawaii, we never get enough heat to sweeten that thing up, so we don't even think about it. Moro, I believe, is one of the few blood oranges. It is here on the island. And it does sweeten up acceptably, but it just doesn't color for me. Now, if there's anybody else out there on the Big Island, or in the whole state, who has Moro and has a story about how they managed to see color come on it, because I'm thinking it's possible as the tree ages, this might start to happen. The tree's fairly young. I think I put it in 2008. Yeah, 2008, so it's a 13, 14-year-old tree. Sometimes certain citrus trees don't even really get going right until they're 20 years old. Satsuma mandarins, if the trees are 50 years old, or valencias or navels, those are fruits to die for. Prior to that, they're edible. They're not as good. Well, this guy right here is Satsuma, and Satsuma has been historically one of my favorite citrus trees, but here in Hawaii, it is not. We have a little bird here called the Japanese white-eye, Mochigo. I don't know how to pronounce the local name, but it's a Japanese white-eye. And the bird pierces the rind on this fruit because it's soft, and it makes all the fruit in the tree rot. And so far, I've managed to find 2 or 3 of them, but there are ugly residues of emptied fruit hanging all over in this tree because of that bird. And so this tree, which was a favorite of mine in California, is no longer my favorite tree here in Hawaii. This tree right here behind me is Bear's Lime, or Tahitian lime, it's also called. This tree is wonderful here as far as the amount of fruit that it will produce and how early it does that. The tree began fruiting for me in about 2 or 3 years and has been producing substantial crops for years now. It was planted in 2007. I had the only problem, though, and that is that I had this tree in California, and in California it produced market-sized limes. Limes that looked a lot like this, which is what all the guys in the restaurants want, is this size. Put the little wedge next to your taco, your fish, you know. Unfortunately, most of the fruit comes down from the tree this size, okay, which is really too big for the guys who are using it for food. They don't want this size. I've been rejected because of it. But a lot of the fruit will come down this size. They're all good, they're all delicious, but nobody wants them this big except the bartenders. The bartenders will take them because they're juicing them out mostly from making mojitos and stuff, and so nice, big, juicy fruits are a really good thing. And so they can be marketed to the bars. But as far as using them in the food industry, it's a waste here. I have no idea how in the heck you could get this tree to produce smaller fruit on this island. You know, California did it. Here they're too big. They're good, though, and they make 2 crops each year. So this thing is loaded, constant. Always limes. This little guy here is Tangerine. That's one of the Florida types. It's a little later than some of my others, later than Satsuma. It's not quite ripe yet. The tree is rather vertical in its growth habit, but it produces good tangerines in most climates, where Dancy is more of a Florida form. This guy right here behind me, called Fairchild, is a California tangerine. Fairchild has very nice shiny skins. It's a little earlier than Dancy. The flavor is quite good. And the tree is extremely robust. This tree was planted the same time the Dancy was planted. There's a lot of difference between the two. The fruit quality, I like it. It's pretty good. It's a decent tangerine. Very juicy. Yeah, real nice. Extreme juice. Decent tangerine taste. Fairly easy to peel. Not as easy as a satsuma, but the rind is thicker. And like Dancy, the rind is thicker than satsuma, and the white eyes try to wrap at this one. They knock some of the fruit out of the tree, but they can't get their beaks through it. And so I'm getting to like Fairchild quite a bit. Right here is a good example about rootstocks. This is Temple. Temple is a Tangor. It's a cross between a tangerine and an orange. It's from Florida. It was one of my mother's favorite oranges. That's why it's here. I've actually never grown it before. I've eaten it years ago when Mom used to buy them, but they're mostly grown in Florida. But what I'm finding out is that I bought this Temple on a trifoliate dwarfing rootstock, and boy, I ain't ever doing that again, because this tree over here, Fairchild, which is really big, is on some sort of a seedling rootstock that's not trifoliate, that makes the trees extremely vigorous. So this tree right here is the same age as this tree right here. I'm done planting on trifoliate rootstocks here in Hawaii. That ain't gonna happen again. Although it's getting to be the most common type rootstock you find. I don't like it. It doesn't work on my soil as well. This guy over here. Yeah. Love this. This is Page. Page is a tangelo hybrid. Now that's a weird, actually. Now, the tree, as you can see, is round. It's beautifully round, so it has a wonderful shape. That really appeals to me. It doesn't require much pruning. This is on the same rootstock as the Fairchild, and so it's been growing vigorously. It's 1 year younger than the Fairchild is. But this right here is becoming probably my favorite piece of citrus on earth now. The skin is too tough for the white eyes. They can't get through. It's a little susceptible to citrus scab, but it's not that big a deal, and you can't treat for that. No, man, it just don't get any better. Tangelo hybrid is a strange. What they did was they started with a tangelo, and a tangelo is already a hybrid. It's a cross between a tangerine and a grapefruit. At one time, grapefruits used to be called pomelos in this country until we figured out that they weren't pomelos. And so they still use the elo, okay? Elo. So it's tangelo. That's how they get that name. It's grapefruits and tangerines crossed. But this one was taken and crossed back to tangerines again. So it's a very odd tree that has a three-way parentage. A flavor to die for. It has the juiciness and the cell size in the fruit of a grapefruit. But the flavor is actually more like an orange, and the appearance is more like an orange. I thought it was a Tangor, but that's not what the books say. It is, though, the best tasting piece of citrus I can grow here in Mountain View. Top of the line. Tree grows well, bears young. I guess I managed fruit in 3 or 4 years. All of these trees in this row over here were all planted in 2016. And so there isn't one of them in the row that's more than 5 years old. Some of them might have been put in 2017. So there may be some 4 and 5 year old trees here. Don't remember anymore. But Page is just a gorgeous tree. I can't say too much about it. I love it. Page is a favorite of mine. Over here, here's a real oddball. It's relatively new from California. This is Golden Nugget, and I'd sampled it at Mingwei's place back in California, and I decided it was definitely an excellent fruit. And so when I ran across it here, I decided I'd put one in. But Dancy grows vertical, but this thing grows like a Lombardy poplar. I mean, it looks like an Italian cypress, like they ought to put these around graveyards or something. It's the most vertical thing I've ever seen in a citrus, and that's not going to be a lot of fun, frankly. So I'm not excited about the shape of the tree, nor am I excited about its tendency to bear young. It doesn't. This is probably a year younger than the page next to it, and maybe it made a couple oranges last year. There's a few in there hiding green yet, but it's slow to bear and very vertical, although the ones I ate in California were extremely delicious. This little guy right here is Eureka Lemon. I wanted a short one, so this is on dwarf rootstock, and it's new. I planted it in the last year. It's growing well, looks good. It made a few flowers. None of them held. It'll probably make its first crop next year. I have the standard size Eureka way out back over here, and Ellen says, oh, it's too far away to walk, and the tree's so big, I want a dwarf. And so there you go, it's a dwarf. And because the Eureka Lemon is a very tall and vigorous growing plant, this is on trifoliate, I believe. It was sold as a dwarf, and it appears to be growing pretty good rate of speed. I'm fairly happy with its production and performance at this point. And so, Temple, not so good on trifoliate, but Eureka's pretty good. So this little guy right here is also brand new. Oh, I don't know, 8 months ago maybe he went in, I don't quite recall. This is Magroot, the Kaffir lime. Kaffir lime's from Thailand. It's pretty hardy. It's a pretty hardy plant. It'll take quite a bit of frost, actually. This is the one where they use mostly the leaves. This is used for making Thai curries, and the leaf is the seasoning, like a bay leaf. It does produce a fruit. It's a weird-looking little knobby lime. It's used medicinally in Thailand. I imagine it's probably used in some culinary fashion, but the only use I know of this is the leaf. And it's a good taste, too. Boy, you can't make a Thai curry without Magroot. Well, so there was a brief tour of some of the citrus we have here. I have others. I have the Valencia orange. It doesn't have too much of a crop on it right now to show off. It's there. Mostly they're green. The Valencia is unique in that it's an orange tree that will actually, like a lemon or a lime, it can hold a crop in the tree as another crop is coming. So you can end up with two crops overlapping in the same tree, which allows you to get fruit from the tree most of the time. The difficulty is sometimes they're all orange, but one will be ripe and the other one will be sour. So, being able to distinguish the difference. This is a tree that a lot of people who have them in California, I know, they used to strip the crops so that they didn't end up with the overlap. That way they didn't get confused. Anyway, it tends to ripen out, so it's really nice and sweet here. It colors up pretty good in Mountain View, but I've seen them from Kahala, and from Kahala, they call them Kahala greens. They look like an emerald. Over in Kona, they're brown and netted. They look like a potato. They call them Kona browns. Here, they're not as bright as they are in California, but they do turn orange. So they look pretty good. They're not real bad looking in Mountain View, but we get, I guess, cool enough that it gets a little color in the fruit. Citrus really react to their environment so much. As I'm saying, here's the Valencia, right? The Valencia, I had it in California. It grew one way. I have it here, and then it's not the same as the ones growing on the other side of the island because of the conditions. It's very sensitive to conditions, and it will change the way the fruit looks. We got Mineola Tangelo here, which is, I believe, Dancy Tangerine crossed to the marsh seedless grapefruit. It's a favorite in the markets. It should be in right now, in fact. You should be seeing those little ones with a little pear neck on them. They're coming from California. They're really orange in color. From Florida, not quite as bright, but they grow them both places. It's milder, sweeter, juicier from Florida, a little more sprightly from California. It's pretty darn good here. It's pretty good here. You also have some calamansi, the Filipino lime. That is not here because I like calamansi. It's actually here because I made a mistake. When I was picking up trees, I looked at the tag. There was a big picture of a green lime on it, and I figured, oh yeah, okay, they only grow one lime here anyway. That's the Tahitian, and I grabbed it. Well, after I started to bear, I looked at it and went, wait a minute, this is weird. I checked the tag and I saw, oh, there's underneath that says calamansi and there's a little check next to it. So had a picture of a lime but didn't have the right name, and so I ended up with the wrong tree. So we got any Filipino Hawaiians out there that love this stuff, you might want to get a hold of me, because I got 2 calamansi trees that I don't use that fruit. Yeah. Then, of course, there's the grapefruit, and you notice that I have some hybrids with grapefruit, but I have no grapefruits. Grapefruit is a tree that really requires a lot of heat. It just needs so much heat. The Mineola Tangelo, for instance, because it's half marsh seedless grapefruit, it oftentimes develops chlorosis here due to the cool conditions at this elevation. I have to really make sure I keep it well fed, and even still, it'll kind of fluctuate a little bit in this leaf color. Mostly the grapefruit. Grapefruit really wants that heat. You can get some absolutely delicious grapefruits grown in this country, but they're going to come from South Florida. They're going to come from very South Texas, from Arizona, if they still have a crop going there. At least they used to. In Phoenix, had some wonderful grapefruits. And then, of course, you got the Imperial Valley, the very southern end of California. They grow grapefruits. Places where the temperature will routinely go over 100 degrees, and do that often. They grow really good. They'll get sweet as sugar. Oh, they're so good. But anywhere else, fruit really is bitter. It's not palatable, in my opinion. In the Bay Area, any grapefruit variety you put in would grow, and they would all fruit. The only one that would produce an edible piece of citrus, in my opinion, though, was the Oro Blanco. And it also has a sister cross, Mellow Gold, although I've never even seen a Mellow Gold anywhere, but it's supposedly citrus sister cross with Oro Blanco. Oro Blanco is grapefruit that's been crossed back to pomelo. They used Chandler pomelo and crossed it to the marsh seedless grapefruit, and so they end up with a very grapefruit-like fruit, but it's got a thick rind like a pomelo. It's a white fruit, and it has the sugar of the pomelo, so that's pretty darn good. It's the closest thing to a grapefruit that I would even think about trying to grow here. I've had people here who live near the shore give me grapefruits. Another man the other day showed me a list of citrus, if I was interested, that he had, and he had a lot of grapefruits on it. I didn't ask him what his elevation is or how it works out for him, but every grapefruit I've ever picked here, substandard. It just doesn't get hot enough. So there's no point, in my opinion, in bothering to grow them. Oro Blanco would be the only choice, just like in the Bay Area, California. Yeah, so citrus is extremely responsive and dependent on the climate and the environment that it's grown in. And I mean, very subtle differences in weather conditions. Just because you can grow a Moro blood orange here doesn't mean you'll ever see purple color in it, you know. Certainly you can grow any grapefruit you want to, but good luck finding one that's worth eating. It's just not hot enough. On the other hand, marvelous limes, but they're too big. Lemons, I'm having a similar sort of a problem. My Eurekas are also kind of oversized. So, you know, there are some fruits that are citrus here that I would say could easily be commercial quality. Fairchild makes a beautiful tangerine with a nice shine, and it's definitely a very commercial fruit. Page, whew, anybody who tastes one of those, they're sold, man. You know, trees aren't easy to get. I think there's only one guy here growing them. I have some cutting grown Page, but nothing ready to sell at the moment. But yeah, Page is not an easy plant to find, but I think it's probably the best tasting piece of citrus that I've grown here yet. I'm sure the navel oranges are fine. I had enough of them when I lived in California. We had Washington navel in the front yard, and I ate navels and navels and navels and navels. I'm more into tangelos and tangerines, so I've kind of shifted that. All right, folks. Well, depending on where you live, if you got feedback on how your citrus is doing here, I'd be glad to hear about it because, you know, with our elevation changes and with our wet side, dry side changes and all that, citrus appears to react differently in all sorts of little micro spots around this island. I could even plant them up high enough where they'd all freeze to death here. Yeah, welcome for the next frost hitting South Texas and Florida. Right, we'll see that stuff too pretty soon. Anyway, aloha, hang loose, and let that citrus hang on the tree until it's ripe.